All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us. We have a lot of visitors here, which is really exciting. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to share some time with us. So we're thrilled to kick off today's webinar, an inside look at Acquia's path to Drupal 9. I have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please send them in the Q&A tab, and I'm happy to assist you. If you have any questions for the presenters, please also submit those in the Q&A tab or in the chat. We're monitoring both, so feel free to ask away. We really value your participation here, so please do ask us your questions. As a reminder, slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email since you registered here. We'll get that out to you within the next few days so you can share it with friends, colleagues, etc. Without further delay here, we're actually going to open up a few polls, which we're excited to share with you. So I'm going to launch the first one here. And we want to know, what version of Drupal are you currently using? Yes, so the poll does not support multiple answers. We knew this was going to be a tricky one, so feel free to pick the one that's most relevant to you. All right, last few seconds here to answer the poll. And here's the next one for you. Where are you in your decision cycle when evaluating your Drupal 9 upgrade? The votes are coming in fast and furious. Thank you. All right, we have 90% voted. 2 more seconds here. All right, ending the poll. We will discuss these. I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he can start sharing some information with you on the webinar. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's wonderful to have you all here and to have such a well-attended webinar. The registrations for this one are amazing, and it's going to be a great conversation. So to step back for a moment about why we're here, this is a conversation about why we're thinking about moving to Drupal 9, why you should be considering this upgrade and migration process, and what the business case, the case for your marketers and content editors is for the change, and how that will enable you to get to sort of the future of digital experiences. So the development and the lead up to the release of Drupal 8 was focused on making Drupal sort of the best platform for that future. And we built a technical foundation, but ever since the 8.0 release and that 6-month release cycle, going up into 9 and leading us on forwards towards 10, we've been focused on empowering content editors, marketers, and other end users to leverage that technical power more directly. So today we'll be talking about those features, about the tools that help you get there, that will allow your technical teams to teach your end users to fish for themselves for all the things they need and give everybody more time to focus on innovation. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly introduce our panelists. Then we're going to look quickly at our poll results and dive right in. So I'm Tim Lennon. I'm the CTO of the Drupal Association. Very pleased to be moderating this webinar. I'm here with Dries Beitart, founder and CTO of Acquia, Angie Byron, the Senior Director of Product and Community Development at Acquia, and Mariam Ahmad, Senior Director of Digital Marketing at Acquia. I'm very thrilled to have all of them here. Okay, so Stephanie, can I go ahead and get the results of our first poll? Okay, so it looks like we have a few ambitious folks already all set on Drupal 9. our largest group of participants on Drupal 8 and hopefully getting all ready for their Drupal 9 upgrade, and a good chunk of folks who have a Drupal 7 site, as well as some folks who are looking at Drupal perhaps for the first time. So that's wonderful. We'll have content for really whatever scenario you're in. But yeah, thank you for that information. We'll try and focus on these things here. And if you have questions about your particular scenario, again, that Q&A feature in the Zoom toolbar will help us answer those at the end of the webinar. Let's look at that second poll. All right, so where are you in your decision cycle? It looks like we've got a lot of folks who sort of have a plan and are working on implementation. It's awesome to see that so many people have started thinking about this and are beginning to get things together. But it does look like our next largest group isn't quite sure where to start. So hopefully this webinar will help give you a little bit of an orientation. There's more to say than we can do in a short amount of time, but we can give you a pointer in the right direction and help follow up with some materials that'll help you get further in there. So awesome. Without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and dive right in here and talk a little bit first about new features of Drupal 9. So Dries, can you perhaps start off for us and talk a little bit about some of the major new features of Drupal 9, or the kind of the culmination of the work that's happened from Drupal 8 all the way up through the current release of Drupal 9, and what people should be excited about?
Yeah, of course, happy to. Hey, welcome everybody to the webinar. Tim introduced me already, but in addition to being Acquia's co-founder and CTO, I'm also the founder and project lead of Drupal and responsible for sort of the strategy and the product direction of Drupal. So lots of great new features were introduced in Drupal 8 as well as Drupal 9. And this slide actually shows you sort of the strategic innovation tracks that we have been focused on around Drupal 9. And you can see in the red track, for example, we've been really focused on making it easier for content creators and site builders to, to use media like images and files and etc. We've added a layout builder, workflow improvements. I mean, lots of great new innovations that you get by upgrading to Drupal 9 there. We've also been focused on making it easier to, if you go back for one more second, sorry. We also focused on making it easier to do upgrades. We'll talk about that. And then we've been focused on things like web services, headless and decoupled architectures with things like JSON API, REST APIs, composer management to help you configure and share configurations of features, etc. Composer to manage builds and code bases. Like, there's so many great new features. And on the next couple of slides, Tim, you can go to the next slide. You can see kind of a couple of, I guess, close-ups there. Like, this is the media, the media work that I mentioned. And it allows you to like pick images and embed them in posts and share images and videos, etc. On the next slide, you can see the layout builder. It allows less technical people, non-technical people actually, to use like low code, no code layout building, where you can just drag and drop and create very nice layouts. Again, a feature that shipped with Drupal 9. Go to the next slide. Headless and decoupled, I quickly mentioned that, but obviously in today's world, it's no longer sufficient to just have a website. Very often we find that Drupal users and Acquia customers, they want to push content into other channels. Maybe it's a mobile application, maybe it's a voice assistant, maybe it's a digital kiosk, could be anything. A lot of them are using JavaScript frontends, React, Vue, Angular applications that want to consume all of the content available in Drupal. Again, something that we invested heavily in the last 6 or so years, and a feature that become available with Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. The next slide, you can see even more features. I mean, for those of you that are still on Drupal 7, it's actually kind of crazy to think how many features you're missing out on. Like we have a new theme engine in Drupal 8. We have all these authoring improvements in 8 and 9. We added things like views to core, which feels like ages ago to me. We completely overhauled the multilingual capabilities of Drupal with Drupal 8. I mentioned configuration management that we've been working on for like, 8+ years, accessibility improvements, usability improvements, JavaScript support. I mean, just crazy how much innovation there has been between Drupal 7 and Drupal 9, but also, frankly, between Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. So you can think of a lot of reasons why you want to upgrade. And I'm just scratching the surface here. If you're interested in learning more about all of the new features, we have done webinars about that. You can find more information on Drupal.org as well. So,
awesome. Thank you very much, Dries. And I think before we really dive into kind of the benefits in more detail in the upgrade process, it would be useful to talk a little bit about the timeline around the Drupal release cycle and what's changed since the Drupal 7 release and things like that. So we've heard you and other people say in the past that the upgrade from 7 to 8 is going to be sort of the last big upgrade. So what does that actually mean for an upgrade from 8 to 9 or from 9 to 10? What's that experience going to be like?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, the way Drupal used to work before Drupal 8 is that we did these, I call them big bang releases, where we would work on a new version of Drupal, a new major version of Drupal for many years. And in the process, we were never afraid to break APIs and make sort of drastic changes. Unfortunately, making these drastic changes and doing these big bang releases does result in a very painful upgrade path. And so with the start of Drupal 8, we decided to completely change how we develop Drupal, how we manage backwards compatibility, and frankly, as a result of that, how we approach upgrades. So once you upgrade from 7 to 8, for everyone on 8, upgrades going forward will be easy. And they will be easy because we have a completely new backwards compatibility policy. And so where we maintain backwards compatibility for a major release cycle or more. And so basically what that means is that going from 7 to 9 will be a hard upgrade, but we'll talk about ways to make that easier and faster and cheaper in this webinar. Going from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 should be relatively easy. And that's actually why, if you look at this slide with the timelines, it looks a little bit weird, right? Because why does Drupal 7 support and after Drupal 8 support? It feels backwards. And the reason is, all the things that I just explained, because that upgrade from 7 to 9 is hard, and we want to give organizations and individuals more time. And so if you are on Drupal 7, Drupal 7 is going to be officially end of life by the end of November 2022, right? That means you have like, what, a year and a half, a little bit more maybe, to get from 7 to Drupal 9. Now, if you're not ready to upgrade from 7 to 9, there will be commercially extended support. What that means is that you can pay companies like Acquia. We will offer this to our customers. And what we will do is we will backport security fixes and maybe important bug fixes onto Drupal 7. So if you need to stay on Drupal 7 for a longer period of time, you have options. So there's no need to panic. Now, if you are on Drupal 8, and this might be, I don't know if this is going to be a shocker or not, but if you are on Drupal 8, you actually have to upgrade to Drupal 9 this year. By November of 2021, this year, you have to make the transition from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. But as I mentioned, that upgrade should be easy. And we'll talk about that as well in this webinar. So this is an important slide. Feel free to take a screenshot. I'm sure we can send it out as well. But these are some of the timelines that you have to keep in mind.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dries. And yes, we'll definitely make these slides available and sent out to everyone along with the recording after the webinar. It'll all be posted to acquia.com. And yeah, I mean, it's remarkable how much the upgrade situation has changed. I think I've been in the Drupal community for 15 years, and when 9 was released, which was such a celebration throughout the community, I think it was the first time ever I had people tweeting at the Drupal Association saying, "I've just done my upgrade for 2.9 on the same day it was released." It was incredible how quickly some people were able to go from 8 to 9.
Yeah, and I have lots of stories there, Tim, as well. Like I've talked to a lot of large Drupal users, and some of them said, well, the upgrade from 7 to 8 took me 9 months. And the upgrade from 8 to 9 was done in a few weeks by an intern, like amazing stories about how easy it is to go from 8 to 9 relative, 7 to 8.
Yeah, it's an amazing change in the experience. Now, towards the beginning of this webinar, we claimed significant improvements for marketers and content editors in Drupal 9 and beyond. So I want to turn to Miriam here and ask, so how does Drupal 9 actually change that focus for marketers and content editors? What should folks be looking forward to when they make it to Drupal 9?
Sure. Hi, everyone, first. So I think Drupal 9 doesn't necessarily change the focus as much as it helps marketers and content editors and developers refocus, right? So the way that we've configured, we being, the Acquia team, our Drupal 9 instance and our sites built on Drupal 9 really allows our developers to focus on the front end and back end work that's really important to build, new experiences and to up-level our experiences that we're delivering. And then our web ops heroes to really focus on operationalizing, our business initiatives, as well as, our digital optimization experts focusing on tactics that improve lead generation, like, SEO optimization, testing and beyond. So I think, you get all the tools you need. And on top of that, if you really kind of structure your site the right way to get the most out of those tools, and I'll talk about that more as we go forward, you're setting a great foundation for making sure the experts you have on your team are doing the things that they really need to be doing to up-level your business and to scale versus just keeping the lights on.
Awesome. So to sort of sum that up, you have less of this interdependency where your marketing team needs to go to your developers just to do a branding change or something like that, or where your optimization team needs to talk to some other group before they can make their changes. Yeah, I think
absolutely.
that's a remarkable change. And that starts to speak, I think, to sort of the business value of Drupal 9 and kind of what it brings to the table from a digital experience point of view. And we're going to use Acquia's own path for Acquia.com itself going to Drupal 9 as a little bit of a case study for this. So let's talk about this a little bit. Miriam, perhaps you can answer again. Could you just tell us a little bit about how you within Acquia kind of evaluated the business case for Acquia.com's own move to Drupal 9?
Sure. I mean, I would say my number one takeaway is that whether you're migrating from another solution or upgrading, from D8 or migrating from D7, it's a worthwhile investment, right? And the reason I would say that is because, I've worked with the Sitecores and the HubSpots and, Adobe's, WordPress of the world. And in my personal opinion, from my experience moving into D9, the best part of D9 is that you gain the advanced security fixes and all the features, that Dries talked about, workflows, multilingual, and so much more that were released with D8 and additional features that were released with D9. But you also maintain the benefits of working in an open source solution, right? So, you can plug in all the tools that you already love, that you use. And if you need to pivot or add something new, some new capabilities, it's really easy to do that, both, with Drupal's app, ecosystem, as well as Acquia's partners, right? So in other words, you basically get the flexibility of open source that allows you to build your site in a headless, hybrid, or any model that really fits your operational needs. You can also build workflows to really truly control your operation and manage it in a really simple way for all the content editors, all the developers, all the web ops folks, and so on. And then you get all the features and integrations that you need for your unique business. And then you get to keep the simplicity of upgrades that proprietary solutions provide. So, once you add in Acquia's tools into that as well, like Site Studio and personalization, and so on, you get really like a best-in-class infrastructure that is scalable and that is efficient. So I think, pivoting to a different solution every time your business reaches a new height is really costly. And I'd be surprised if some of you folks haven't done that, right? Or haven't had to do that. And so I think what I would suggest is you really take a moment to think about your future and think about your past. And, do you need to be more flexible? Ask yourself that question. And if that's the case, then, with D9, especially with, Acquia's Drupal cloud products, you have that simplicity that, the HubSpots of the world provide, without sacrificing the flexibility that, the WordPresses of the world provide, that you get with Drupal, and proprietary solutions like Adobe and Sitecore. In my opinion, they really kind of cater to advanced enterprise, which is great, for maybe a certain moment in time for your business. But frankly, they're costly solutions, and ultimately they constrict scalability. At some point, you're going to hit some wall where you need more flexibility. So that's what I would say is like, the greatest advantage that I've seen working with D9 and Acquia's tools.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So can you talk about specifically sort of the goals that you had in doing the Drupal 9 strategic rebuild once you decided that's how you wanted to move forward?
Sure. So, everyone's experience is going to be unique. As we saw earlier in our poll, some folks are in D7, some folks are in D8, some folks aren't on Drupal at all. So I'll speak to our unique experience, and kind of how to think about it if you're in a different position than we were. So our move to D9 was really a strategic rebuild that we focused on, re-architecting our code base to reestablish consistency, implementing a component framework, and strategically architecting structured and unstructured content. In other words, we really needed to look at what was going on under the hood that was limiting us from getting the most out of Drupal's new, content authoring, mobile first, multilingual features, and so on. We felt that, we had to hit the reset button in a way. We had been on Drupal 8 actually since 2017. So we were going from 8 to 9, and the migration was rather simple. However, we kind of had a little bit of a clunky site, and we had, some different developers over years.
Should we take a look at a screenshot of what the site looked like?
Sure.
Before?
Yeah. So our site, this is a perfect example, right? We were making decisions based on business needs, and they were quick decisions. So for example, we needed to talk about more or two different people in our, hero on our homepage. So we created a scroller. It's a quick solution and it works to an effect. But if you look at the new site, you can go ahead. This is a way more intentional approach, right? So we're able to really speak to the different audiences we want to. If you go to the site, it's, the little color moves. There's just a lot more going on here. It's very clean and simple. It's modern. So we took this opportunity to kind of hit that reset button on what's going on under the hood, and why wouldn't you redesign too, right? If you're going to be rebuilding and restructuring. So that's kind of two birds, one stone, and that's sort of how we approach the initiative.
Awesome. Well, from here, let's talk a little bit about that upgrade process, because we know we have a lot of people in the audience. In fact, our largest cohort was folks trying to make this upgrade from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. So I think that's probably where we should start. I'm going to hand it over to Angie here to talk about some of the best practices involved in actually making this upgrade happen in a smooth way. So Angie, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim. So I noticed from the poll that most people are on Drupal 8, which is excellent. As Dries alluded to earlier, upgrading from 8 to 9 is a pretty straightforward process. There's only just 5 steps. You make sure that your environment is capable, and this is information if you're a marketer, you might want to pass on to your IT team, or if you're a nerd like me, then we can get into the details here. So make sure your environment is compatible with Drupal 9. Drupal 9 increased a couple of requirements. PHP version is 7.3, MySQL version is 5.7, and so on. We did that so that you're supported on a modern platform that doesn't need further updates through the life of Drupal 9. So it's important for security and it's important for performance. Next, you're going to update your core to the latest Drupal 8 version, and we support upgrading from either the last 2 versions of Drupal 8, effectively Drupal 8, 8.8 or 8.9. You have to update all your contributed projects so that they're Drupal 9 compatible. The great news here is many modules run just as good in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 concurrently. So if you're on the latest versions of the various modules that you're using, you probably already have Drupal 9 support. And if not, we'll get into a couple of tools in a second here that can help you with that. If you have custom code, you're going to look for any deprecated APIs you might be using and remove those usages. Every single API change we make has a little documentation with it that says it used to be this, now it needs to be that. And we even have tools to automate that. So that's really awesome. And then finally, when all your modules are in place, including your custom code, you update your Drupal core to Drupal 9, just as you would if you're moving from, say, 8.5 to 8.6. Run update the PHP, and you are done.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a different world for people who kind of made it through 6 to 7 or 7 to 8.
And I know from our poll results that we do have several folks who are on 9, so I'm sure maybe they could share some of their stories in the chat about how that's gone for them. And I wanted to point out, when it came to contributed project compatibility, I saw a stat shared by some of the Drupal core team recently that I think it was close to 90% of the top 1,000 modules hosted on Drupal.org were Drupal 9 compatible. And of those remaining 10%, a number of them are things that have been, replaced by core functionality, right? Views is built into core. That's a module that many of you probably know. And so, of course, it doesn't need to be upgraded in Contrib anymore. So, yeah, it's a really good situation with a lot of support already ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned that there are some tools that people can use to help them with these steps. Can you talk through some of those for us, Angie?
Sure. So there's basically 3 key tools, and I want to give a shout out to Palantir.net, Centauro, and as well as Acquia. They have contributed kind of above and beyond to these automated tools to make it much easier for people to move from 8 to 9, and these tools will exist for 9 to 10 and so on as well. The first one is upgrade status. If you've done older Drupal versions, you might know this tool. It's basically a module that you install on your site. It gives you a personalized dashboard that shows you all of the code in your site and which ones are ready and which ones aren't, along with helpful tips on how to move. Say you're using an older version of module and a new one is Drupal 9 compatible. It'll direct you to download that and things like that. So that's a really good tool to download, just to kind of get a sense of what your upgrade is going to look like. Upgrade Rector it's a funny name, but it's a tool for automating a lot of those API deprecations we talked about. Because really the only difference between the last version of Drupal 8 and the first version of Drupal 9 is getting rid of those backward compatibility layers so that the tool is much more performant. So what this does is it already knows about many of those changes. You can run the tool, it will automatically make the code changes for you on your behalf for most of the changes that you'll see. You might have to do some manual work for a few of them, but it's a really great time saver. And then finally, deprecation status, and these are all linked in the slide deck that will be passed out later. Deprecation status gives you a dashboard of community readiness. So this is the tool that Tim was referring to that kind of shows the overall pie chart of how all the community modules are trending. And one thing I just want to call out is that there's a couple of things, there's a couple of breakdowns in that chart. Some are just, they're ready for Drupal 9, you don't need to do anything. Others talk about an info file being missing. All that's talking about is that in order to make a Drupal 8 compatible, Drupal 9 compatible, you need to make a 1-line change in the info file. And until that is done, it will show as not compatible, even though it's a 1-line change. So yeah, so check out those tools. They're super handy if you're planning out your 8 to 9 migration, which hopefully you are this year. And yeah, just thanks again to Palantir, Centauro, and Acquia.
Awesome. Yeah, this is another portion of the deck that would be great to forward on to your IT teams. These tools will make their lives much easier when it comes to this transition. It's already, again, a pretty easy process, especially if you have limited amounts of custom code, but these can make a big difference. So I think kind of the elephant in the room, of course, is for our next largest cohort in those poll results, which is people going from 7 to 9. So let's talk a little bit about this migration process and what kind of resources or tools might also be available there. So Angie, I'll go to you again, although I see you're also diving into the chat to help people right away. But so we've just talked about how that 8 to 9 upgrade path with these tools available and just the way it works out of the box is so much easier. So how do we get these people who are on 7 into this new easy upgrade path cycle? What can we do to sort of help them get there?
Yeah, well, let's go through like what are the steps involved in a 7 to 9 migration or a 6 to 9 migration if you're still on Drupal 6. There's a few different things that you're talking about here, because we're talking about a migration here. We're not talking about an upgrade to separate it from the previous situation. So you're kind of doing analysis and planning. You want to find out what modules you're using, what the Drupal 9 equivalent of those modules is, if you need a module for that anymore, because again, Drupal core and Drupal 9 is much more full featured. A lot of people also take this opportunity, since it's a big migration, to do kind of a content audit as well, as Miriam was talking about. It's like, do I need all of these content types? Would it be better if I smush some of them together? These kinds of things. Then there's a DevOps component. I saw a couple of questions in chat about like, if I'm using this specific version of MySQL or I'm using this. Drupal 9 does, as I mentioned, have increased system requirements. So you have to kind of wrangle that. Then the data import piece. So a lot of the contributed modules will port things for you, but not all of them. So you pretty quickly need a developer to come up to speed on what we call the Drupal MIGRATE API. And that is a really powerful set of APIs. It's an amazing thing. It's just a generic framework for doing migrations, but it does require some time to come up to speed. And there's a lot of typing out YAML files manually.
And because it's a generic framework, it could apply not just for, say, the Drupal 7 to 9 or 6 to 9, but also if you're on a totally different content framework or a custom CMS or something like that, potentially.
That's exactly right. Like there are plugins to migrate, for example, from WordPress to Drupal. There's also a plugin to migrate from. It's like a generic content standard that is used by Sitecore and the Microsoft CMS that I'm forgetting, and things like that. So yeah, people have done a lot of work to make that process really streamlined. And then if you have custom codes, so your custom modules, custom themes, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the community, the big, great open source community Drupal has, is not going to help you with that because that's your code. So you have to also port that yourself. And there are tools that can help. I mentioned upgrade status in the previous section. That's a great tool for Drupal 9, but it also exists for Drupal 7 as well, and kind of, again, gives you that overview of which modules are ready and not. There's also a tool called Drupal Module Upgrader that we built as part of an Acquia hackathon project actually back in the day. And it will do some of those automated changes, although the automated changes are much more extensive between 7 and 9. So it can really only get you like 50–60% of the way there, but it's at least, a start.
Right. So so this is a process that has some distinct, like, well thought out steps. And honestly, looking at this, there's a good I would say more than 50% of this is actually about your sort of business case and thinking, your content audit and your information architecture, as much as it's about the technical side. But I know that there are tools that can help with this. And in particular, there's a tool called Acquia Migrate Accelerate. So could you tell us a little bit about what that is, Angie, and who it's for?
Yeah, so I have been the product manager of Acquia Migrate Accelerate for the last year or so, so I know a lot about this. Acquia kind of took a look at all of our customers on Drupal 7, as well as all the community sites that are on Drupal 7, and kind of took a look at the delta. Like, you have to bear in mind, Drupal 7 came out in 2011 in January, so literally more than a decade old at this point. So that means people still on Drupal 7 aren't benefiting from all those great things that we talked about earlier in the discussion. So we built this tool as a way to help people kind of spearhead their migrations. It is not, unfortunately, a one-click button and you're done kind of situation, but what it is a set of tools that can help accelerate the really tedious parts of the migration and the really challenging parts of the migration and make it much, much easier. So we bill it as the only tool available for accelerating Drupal 7 to 9 migrations. Again, you don't need this tool. There's open source tools available. But we specifically built this tool to kind of address some common problem areas. For example, making sure that the migrations are imported in the correct dependency order, building a nice UI around it so you don't have to have a developer to get started with your migration. You can actually click it through, get most of your content in there, and then that can help you build out your theme. And probably the biggest thing that we've done here is we've kind of built in Acquia expertise. So for example, I'm sure everybody who's done a 7 to 9 migration has that ginormous spreadsheet of doom where it's like, okay, I'm using field collection and now that's paragraphs, but it's not quite working. You need these 3 patches. We've already done the homework for you on all of these different migrations, web form, paragraphs, you name it. If it's in the top 50 modules, we've probably got it covered, and we keep expanding that all the time. So you benefit from that as well. We automatically generate a Drupal 9 site with a new dedicated environment that you can use to perform your migration. It's already set up with the tools ready to go.
That's awesome. And can you walk us through, here are some of those components of that tool. Can you explain a little bit what we're looking at here?
Sure, yeah. So the first step is you'll go through a little wizard and it will generate a dedicated cloud environment for you. The reason for that is because unlike Drupal 7 to 8, unlike Drupal 6 to 7, where you'd run this upgrade script on your production website and pray to the Lord that it would not everything about it. In Drupal 8 and above, you actually build out your new site separately, migrate your content into it, and then just flip the switch when you're done.
Right.
So this allows your production site to stay up and running on its own and unbothered while you work on your migration in a different place. It also has some fancy tools, like for example, there's a refresh button that you can click. It will automatically suck down a new copy of your data and files from your Drupal 7 site, so you make sure you're always working against the latest stuff. The second is that module recommendation engine I mentioned. So that's where kind of the encapsulation of us doing all the homework for which modules to use in what situations. There's also other Acquia expertise built in. For example, there's a messages console that surfaces any kind of errors coming from the migration system as you're going. We also can provide like kind of Drupal human readable solutions for that. So I think another big part of it is just this Acquia expertise component. And then finally, the big thing about Acquia Migrate Accelerator is this kind of enhanced migration capabilities and decoupled UI. You know, the Migrate API is very powerful, but it's very much written for someone who knows what they're doing and is very familiar with the Migrate API. And if you are not one of those people, you're going to have a tough time. So we build tools specifically so that organizations can kind of get started and not have to, you know, go to their most senior developer to even start the process. And it's all written in React, and it uses the new like, you know, decoupled stuff that Dries was shining up earlier. So it's pretty fun to use.
That's actually kind of a nice introduction to some more application-like functionality that you might even want to use in your own site. So,
Yeah.
so what is the impact that has on the effort it takes to actually make this migration happen?
Yeah, great question. So the impact is that on your analysis and planning, we're able to cut a lot of that off because we're able to do the module research for you. We're also able to provide tools to, for example, preview your migration before you import it so you can check for errors in the incoming data. We also do a lot of work to help with the content audit. So for example, we'll flag for you if there's a problem in the Drupal 7 site where, you know, a particular comment is pointing at file 4 and file 4 doesn't exist. It will call out things like that. The DevOps piece goes away entirely. We give you an environment, it's already set up. Best practices for Drupal 9, don't need to worry about it. And then the data import piece, we automate a ton of otherwise manual work. So particularly sites with a lot of content and a lot of content types and fields and very complex data models will benefit a lot from this tool. AMA kind of stops there. And then from there, for your business logic and your presentation, we kind of call out to other Acquia offerings. So for example, on the presentation side, Acquia Site Studio is like a low code solution for doing page layouts that you can pass, and Miriam has direct experience with and can speak to. That's a great way to bypass the whole, I have to now start coding my theme all over again in Twig, and instead kind of setting it up, you know, so it's not only using Drupal 9 themes engine, but also it's set up so that your marketers can make more changes themselves without bugging you. And a new product that we've announced recently, Acquia Cloud IDEs, is a great in-browser debugging tool. It's got Composer, Drush, Xdebug, all the things that you might need. And that can really help speed up that business logic piece as well. And then of course we have our own professional services department, a variety of awesome partners to work with. If you just want to say, I don't want this to be my problem, I would like someone to take care of it for me, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angie. That's really great. And it's pretty incredible how that tool can kind of consolidate together a lot of those best practice components that we talked about earlier about what you need to be thinking about to make this happen and help accelerate sort of each step along the way. I can see that we've got a ton of related questions coming in about this topic, so we'll definitely see if we can dive in the chat. And also, again, feel free to also post them to the Q&A. We'll try and get to as many as we can towards the end.
Before we move off, I saw the question, how much does AMA cost? AMA is free. It's included in any Acquia Cloud Enterprise subscription. So if you're on ACE, you get benefit from this.
Awesome. Okay, great. So I'm going to turn it again to Miriam here. So Miriam, we've seen from Angie that there are tools to make this process easier, but we know that there kind of needs to be that business case to undertake this kind of change. So, you know, if you're a leader of a digital team, what kind of triggers you to do this? What are the signs that say it's time for us to go ahead and upgrade?
Sure. I mean, I'd say the number one sign that your website is due for an upgrade is that your business isn't keeping up. Your website is not keeping up with your business, right? So, you know, some of the things I mentioned earlier in terms of, you know, you're not moving as quickly as you would like to, you're not able to generate content as much as you like to, your site's kind of aged, you know, you should handle those things now, right? But in general, we all know we need to upgrade at some point. So that's the other reason I would say don't kick the can, you know, now is really the time to tackle this stuff and set yourself up for success down the line. You know, for us, you know, we, as I mentioned earlier, we're having some issues in that our inconsistencies and aged code and kind of clunky site was limiting us from moving quickly and limiting us from getting the most out of all of Drupal's amazing features. You know, so in, you know, most businesses redesign their sites every couple of years, and if you don't, you should. Your customers kind of expect it. You got to keep up with the times, and your website is really your 24/7 storefront. So it's a big opportunity for you to kind of, take advantage of that space. So if you're not able to build as quickly as you want, if your look and feel is aged, if you have performance issues, those should be triggers from a business perspective. Or if you lack the functionality or features that you need, that kind of falls into those three buckets, right? It could be tied together. And the way to really know if an upgrade or migration is the answer is, if you're not a developer, I hope you appreciate this, but listen to your developers. They know what's going on. The sooner you get your developers focus on building new experiences versus just keeping the lights on, the sooner you regain momentum of your website's lead generation or revenue generation, whether you're e-commerce or not, right? Potential. And I think that that's really important, especially nowadays.
Awesome. Dries, let me hand it to you for a second, because I know that you've witnessed a lot of Drupal end users, Acquia customers, and others making this decision about when to do that sort of migration and upgrade. So what were some of the key factors that you saw in people choosing to make the leap?
Yeah, I mean, some people, they upgrade because they want to upgrade. Let's say they're used to just tracking software upgrades. But as actually Miriam alluded to or explained earlier, very often it's part of a bigger kind of refresh cycle. Very often, I would see customers, they want to kind of redo their website, refresh their brand, give it a complete new look and feel, or just reorganize it in a more dramatic way. Maybe it's because they brought in a different digital leader. Maybe it's because they switched to a different digital agency and they kind of want to update their brands, which is fairly typical, I find, for an organization to do that every 4 years or something, to kind of start over with their digital presence. The main driver is then to actually refresh the brands. And oh, by the way, we will upgrade to the newest version of Drupal along the way. So I think it's either one of those. The other driver that I've seen quite a bit is organizations that have made a strategic decision, sometimes from the board level, to kind of do a digital transformation. I know that's kind of a big word, but very often, and we've seen this a lot actually last years, where organizations need to pivot, they need to get into e-commerce, they need to start thinking about how to engage with their visitors and customers in different ways. They may have to embrace different channels, as I mentioned, whether it's chat or voice or even mobile. They want to really take advantage of these capabilities that we've added to Drupal 9 and Drupal 8. Frankly. And so sometimes they need to get on the innovation train again, to basically deliver the kind of experiences that, frankly, their customers have come to expect. And so it's anywhere from one, just tracking software upgrades, which is good hygiene, I would say, to rebranding or redesigning or refreshing a digital presence, to really digital innovation and being a digital innovator and leading with really great digital experiences. And I think all three of these are good reasons to upgrade. And I guess the last one is because they have to, because the version that they're on is about to get end of life.
Yeah, that's always a factor.
Of course, yeah.
There's always security support. But I think we can't emphasize that innovation train element enough. Like, one of the things that should be clear here is, beginning with Drupal 8 and throughout the Drupal 9 cycle, Drupal has been getting major feature improvements every 6 months that have expanded the digital experience capabilities of the platform. And once you are on that innovation train, the ability to adopt those new features is not a matter of a painful, extensive internal decision-making process. It's just a matter of keeping up to date with those upgrades and then choosing when to implement any of those new features that come online, which is really powerful. It keeps you on that leading edge instead of it being a leapfrog process where you catch up in 1 year and then a few years later you have to do it all again. We are getting a little bit short on time, and I do want to be able to answer a couple of our questions, but I've got one more quick section to go through. So,
and by the way, Tim, we've been trying to answer a lot of questions in sort of in parallel, just so you
Okay,
know.
great. It's good. So we've got the questions going in text as well, and that's awesome. So we want to talk a little bit specifically about how these features that we've talked about are used to enhance customer experience. And again, we're going to look at the Acquia case study itself and what can be sort of built on top of what Drupal provides. So Miriam, I'm going to throw it to you again. We'll try and keep them relatively quick because I know we will have some folks who still have more questions as we begin to wrap up. But can you talk about first how this upgrade kind of changes the day-to-day of managing a marketing team and a content editorial team? And then perhaps let's talk about what the Acquia products themselves can add on top of Drupal 9.
Sure. I think I can't echo enough what Dries said. Ultimately what that kind of translates to in the day-to-day is that it gives me huge relief, like great relief to know that our team can really focus on up-leveling our site versus just keeping the lights on, right? And so whether there is some business initiative that is triggering the need for an upgrade, you're going to have to do it eventually. And that business trigger is going to happen eventually also, right? So you might not have something right now, but I think now is a great time to take advantage of, everything kind of coming together, right? You're going to need to upgrade, and folks are really up leveling their digital experiences right now, and you want to keep competitive. So I would say, my day-to-day operations right now, we've addressed our structural issues. We have, the latest version. We have all the functionality we need, and we're built in a way to leverage that functionality. And so it's really easy for us to plug in new things, new capabilities, new, channels, like Dries mentioned, like chat and so on. So we're prepared for what's coming, and that like helps me sleep at night. I can't even tell you how much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So then what's on the horizon, or even what have you built on top of to give you the capabilities that you want to use over the next few years?
Yeah, so we're obviously pairing Acquia's products, right, with D9, and what I really love about that is we get the best of both worlds. So you get all the features that you need to support your business, but the benefits of open source make it really easy for you to integrate your favorite tools, as I mentioned. And then layering on Acquia products, gives you all the benefits of a proprietary CMS from especially like the marketer and digital, side. We have a simple managed solution for security and compliance. We're making content management really simple, and marketers and business users can go in. As we mentioned with Site Studio, frankly, I'll just say right now, I think Site Studio from an end user's perspective, in my opinion, is 1,000 times simpler than authoring content in HubSpot, for example. I think it's both simpler from an end user perspective, and then it's also more manageable from a web ops perspective. So you're able to kind of put the right workflows and controls around it to keep your content generation engine going. Managing an ecosystem of websites in one central dashboard, multilingual sites, super simple. So I just love knowing that with Acquia's tools, we are able to up level, as I mentioned. We're able to kind of do all the things we need to do, both operationally, internally, as well as externally, and providing all the sites that we need, but in a really simple way, so that again, we're up leveling. When we spend time on a new initiative, we're really spending time building new experiences and not just keeping the lights on and sort of managing the day-to-day in a more complicated and more time-consuming way. And I've got to say again, like you got to see it in action. At the end of the day, you can go to acquia.com. We've launched something with a new site called Acquia in Action. You'll see a little dot in the corner, click that, and we'll show you how we built it. We're totally giving away our secret sauce. So I would suggest you go take a look, and if you're interested, schedule a demo. You got to see it in person and form your own opinions. Again, if you're already on Drupal, you're going to have to upgrade, but I think you should look forward to that. You have a lot to gain. If you're not on Drupal, I think that you should kind of check out what you're missing. And Acquia solutions will give you the best of both worlds that you're working in, and give you the flexibility to grow your business going forward. So if you're like me, it'll help you sleep at night.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Miriam. So with that, we're going to move into Q&A, and I'm going to switch over so that you can see our faces a little bit as we answer in just a moment here. I actually want to kick things off with a first question for Dries really quick. So in addition to looking at some of the demo resources available, say at acquia.com or with some of your team over there, if people want to learn more about 7 to 9, 8 to 9, even about what's coming next in Drupal 10, where can they go and what can they do to learn more?
By Drupal 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a very big question because, as you probably know, we're currently working on Drupal 10, which will be the next major release. And we're not too far from DrupalCon, as you may have heard in the beginning or seen in the beginning. And Drupal 10 is the big focus of DrupalCon. And so I think in the interest of time, I'm going to suggest people join DrupalCon to learn all about Drupal 10 because
Awesome. Okay.
I can possibly answer that in just a few minutes.
No worries. So if you do want to learn more about DrupalCon, you can go to events.drupal.org. It'll be from April 12th to 16th. It's all virtual, so easy for anybody to join, very affordable. We encourage you and your teams to sign up and join us there. A lot of your favorite people from this webinar will be there as well, so it's another chance to engage with all these fine folks too. Okay, so jumping into some questions here. Let's see. There's a lot here that's a little bit specific to some modules and things like that. So I'm going to jump to.
While you look for a question, I can just keep going, Tim. Like I try to answer a lot of questions on NG too, and I think there's a few patterns. Maybe not everybody has seen the answers, but there's a lot of questions about, how do I get Acquia Migrate Accelerate? And the short answer, I just want to reiterate it, is if you are an Acquia customer, you have an Acquia Cloud Enterprise subscription, it is included in your subscription, meaning it is available to you at no cost, or at no additional cost, I should say. Obviously, if you're not on Acquia today, or we would be happy to help you migrate to Acquia. It's a great reason to be quite honest, because you get access to these kinds of tools, not just AMA, but also cloud IDEs and all the other great things that we do. So if you want a tool, please consider migrating. And if you do, it's part of your subscription. I saw like 3 or 4 people ask that question, so I figured I would call it out for everyone.
Great. I see a related question to this, and maybe Angie, you can address this one. This one is, does the Acquia Migrate Accelerator, is that relevant to the 8 to 9 transition as well, or just the 7 to 9?
Yeah, it's really only for 7 and 9, because as we mentioned, the 8 to 9 migration is a much more straightforward. It's just an upgrade. There's a couple of tools you can use to help make that upgrade easier, which we mentioned earlier in the talk. But for 7 and 9, and AMA might eventually be expanded out to support Drupal 6 and WordPress and some of these other things, because it's really more of almost like a re-platforming tool that helps you with that kind of problem case.
Right.
So we're focusing on 7 and 9 right now, just because we want to get all our awesome existing Drupal users onto the latest stuff. But yeah, for 8 to 9, the good news is, although AMA doesn't work for you, that's fine, because you don't need a crazy, like reactified UI around the Migrate API for that. You just, upgrade your code, hit update.php, and you're good to go.
We've actually done a webinar about that as well. Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. We did do a webinar. It's been a while, but I might be somewhere on the acquia.com website. I don't know.
Yeah. And
from our experience, I would just, really quickly piggyback on Angela's notes there. So again, we went from D8 to D9, and it was the smoothest upgrade I've seen, a major site launch, and I've gone through at least 5 or 6, right, of this scale, complete redesign, complete rebuild, and it was the absolute smoothest that I've seen in any other platform comparatively. So you don't have anything to be afraid of. You might have to do a little extra work if you choose to really set the foundation, as I mentioned earlier, address the things under the hood that are kind of limiting you. And when it comes to D7 to D9, we didn't have that tool back in the day, but we wish we've seen it. We've seen it in action, and it's amazing, and it massively simplifies things. So if you have been kind of hesitant to make that leap because there wasn't a solution out there, there is now. And I suggest, again, you do schedule a demo, take a look at it. And I think it will give you ease that it's time to jump into this project and it's not going to be as big of a beast as you think it might be.
Great. I see a couple questions here that are related to, sort of, could I have painted myself in a corner in some way if I did something in, say, Drupal 8, and now I'm looking at my Drupal 9 upgrade? So maybe, Angie, you can address these. One is, like, if I have some custom modules and stuff, is that going to bite me? Is that going to be a bit of an issue? And the other is, sort of on the Acquia side, gosh, if I set up Site Studio with an 8 version, is that still going to transition if I upgrade that site to 9 cleanly? Or are there any concerns there with a Site Studio version change or something like that?
All right, so I'll just be upfront. I don't know the answer to the Site Studio question. I'm assuming that it works because Acquia did a huge push before Drupal 9 was even released to make sure that there was readiness available for all of our products across the fleet. So I would be surprised if there were issues from 8 to 9 on Site Studio, but I can't speak with authority on that, so I don't know that.
Yeah, I can. There's no issue with that. It is ready for Drupal 9. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, our Site Studio instance is phenomenal again, and we're on Drupal 9. So, the best thing I've seen is that when we go to, implement either another one of our solutions, because again, we rebuilt, right? So, in addition to just migrating, so we kind of had to set things up again with our new structure of the site, and it was quick. It was a week, and we're up and running. Anytime we go to add a new solution, even outside of Acquia's tools, it's pretty quick. So I find that to be really phenomenal, and the rate, the speed that we have and the accuracy is just 10 times what I've seen with any other solution out there. So again, I suggest you see it in action. I think you'll be really impressed. And once you're up and running with it, Site Studio, I mean, the content generation is easy peasy. So again, you get to focus on the most important things on a day-to-day basis and not, jumping through hoops to get things out the door.
And I see two related to each other questions here.
One second, I just want to, you had a first part of your question. So
I did, and I think I was sort of going to reiterate it a little bit because another question came in. So the two questions are, like, how much time does it actually take if you're on 8.9 and you're ready to go to 9, but you have a couple custom modules? And then the question that sort of goes with it is, does Upgrade Rector help with those custom modules, or does it only help with your, official Drupal modules?
Yeah, great. No, Upgrade Rector is exactly for that case. The great thing about Drupal is it's this massive open source project with this community of thousands of developers. And they're working all the time to, make sure that the modules are on the latest versions of things, that new modules are coming out whenever there's a new technology to integrate with. I saw a question about machine learning and AI tools, and there's integration with, TensorFlow and all kinds of stuff out there. So that's a really great benefit of an open source community. In terms of painting yourself into a corner, you want to, where possible, kind of benefit from that community. Meaning, if you need a particular piece of functionality and there's a module for that, think seriously about evaluating whether or not that module can be pulled into your code base, because once it is, assuming it's, well built and that kind of thing, then the maintenance is effectively outsourced to the community. They handle the upgrades of that module and making sure things work. If you are, we just downloaded Drupal and I have a bunch of PHP developers, so go to town, and you end up writing a bunch of custom code for things that we do have modules for, you can get yourself into a bit of a corner. If your site is 80% custom code and 20% community modules, that's a hard mix, when you're trying to do a major version upgrade. So I would encourage you, where possible, to do more of an 80-20 split the other way, which is 80% of the functionality from community modules and 20% or fewer from your custom code. But that said, yeah, if you only have a couple of custom modules, the way that will work is and assuming you're kind of on well-supported community modules, you'll download that upgrade status module, get that dashboard for your site. You'll see most of the things are green, maybe a couple of yellows, which means you need to update to the latest versions of things. And then there'll be a couple in red, right? It's like, I don't know what this module is. It's not on Drupal.org, so you're on your own for this. And then what Upgrade Rector will do, and this is just a module that you install like any other module, but it does have a command line component. It'll allow you to run a script on those modules that already knows about a huge chunk of the API changes that happened between 8 and 9. And it will just automatically make those changes to your code so you can review them and then commit them into your source control. So you might be left with, a handful of things that Rector doesn't know about. And then you'll have to, it's going to be you and Stack Overflow and Google basically kind of solve those problems. But,
Sure.
but for the most part, you should be in good shape.
Yeah,
Awesome.
but like as a reference, my own site, my own blog is probably 4 or 5 custom modules on top of Drupal. And I track all of these upgrades, and it takes me anywhere between literally 0 minutes as to 15 or 20 minutes to upgrade.
Yeah.
Just depending on, you know, the version. So
It's
imagine it's quick.
Yeah, it's a total sea change from what you might have been used to in previous Drupal experiences once you're in that new place. So we are out of time for today, but it's actually been a wonderful discussion and a wonderful panel, and your questions as an audience have been fantastic. It's great to see everybody so well engaged. If there are questions that we didn't get to that you would still like answers to, please go ahead and email marketing@theacquiateam.com. Again, the slides and the recording will be posted to acquia.com and emailed to the attendees. I want to thank all of my panelists for letting me join as moderator here and for all of their expertise. And thank you all again for joining us. We hope to see you at DrupalCon. We hope to see you around the Drupal community. Thank you so much. And goodbye.
Thank you very much.